Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Palantir and their SPAC thesis has been absolutely decimated in the mainstream media over the past couple of days. We've had analysts go on CNBC and basically say, hey, you should sell off the stock because it's trading at 11 bucks. They invested a bunch of SPACs. They're only growing because of some of that SPAC revenue. If that SPAC revenue goes away, which they're estimating that these SPACs simply will not grow because the entire market hates SPACs, then that means Palantir is not going to be able to grow organically, which is why you should sell off the stock. This argument is really bad. I've done a couple of videos over the past couple of days explaining why it's really bad, but the fundamental reason why it's bad is because these are the same types of people that said you should sell off Tesla because Tesla was basically making revenue through governmental subsidies. Now, that's a fair argument to make if you're just looking at the numbers, but if you're looking at what the growth story is, the argument fundamentally changes. And Sachin, who was on my channel the other day when we did a podcast, really broke this down. The argument is Tesla's not just buying revenue from the government and then being able to show that they're profitable or show that they're making revenue and that they're growing. Rather, Tesla is a capital-intensive business that is primed for 50, 60, 70% growth. They need all the capital they can get. How do they get that capital? Well, if you can't scale all the cars and sell all the cars that Toyota can, but you can do something that Toyota can't, which is collect electric vehicle subsidies because the entire world was trying to go green. Governments have an incentive for you to go green and scale in that way. Then you can subsidize the costs of the capital that it takes to actually be able to build out the infrastructure to scale at selling 2, 3, 4, 5 million electric vehicles per year as demand is growing. Use that money and in the meantime grow inorganically to eventually grow organically. It is a big picture question of how you can present growth by doing something that the rest of the world cannot do, which is the only reason you're getting the subsidies, which is create electric vehicles to match the entire governmental climate agenda of transitioning the world from ICE internal combustion vehicles to electric vehicles. And because you are differentiated in your approach, you're the only really car manufacturer that can do this, you can use those subsidies and build out a larger growth story because those subsidies are not going to last forever. But in the meantime, they actually help you scale and actually help you do something that the rest of the world can't do. And the reason the rest of the world can't do it is because they don't have the capabilities that Tesla can. So as a result, if you're an analyst looking just at the numbers, you're like, well, this is organic growth. But if you're looking at the macro level picture, you're like, wait a second. Tesla's doing something the world can't do, which is the only reason they're getting these subsidies. The rest of the world's not getting these subsidies. So when these subsidies are gone and they've used these subsidies in the meantime to scale out their operations, what can they actually do that the world can't do from a true growth perspective? And you get the stock going from $100 to $5,000 post-split. This is a world in which buying into the growth story matters when it comes to these types of high-growth companies. Palantir is one of those companies that's investing in SPACs, particularly because these SPACs are not just, we're going to throw $1 million at 100 companies and hope one of them is the next Instagram like a venture capital firm. But rather, these SPACs are data-driven companies in a world in which we are selling a data-driven product because data is going to run the world. It's much more easier to sell a product to a company that is building their entire infrastructure and foundation of whatever they are selling to the world using data by optimizing data on top of a data platform like a SPAC versus a legacy Fortune 500 company that might be able to pay you more but doesn't truly understand the solution that you're trying to sell to a problem because they don't get the problem. As a result, in their go-to-market strategy in October 2020, Palantir didn't have a crazy sales force. Palantir couldn't sell to these legacy institutions that they had a hard time actually being able to show the product to. So they partnered with these SPACs. They gave them some money. Palantir got some equity. They put about $200 million, which is nothing for Palantir. People are like, they should have invested in a sales force. Why? If you have 14 companies that are at the emerging trends of frontiers of a data-driven world, you're putting money into them, they're giving you money back. You're essentially buying money because they're paying for your product or service, which is the Foundry platform. And out of these 14, let's say 3 or 4 of them make it big. Now your platform is the entire operating system for how these companies actually were able to grow into multi-billion-dollar companies over the next 5-6 years because they believed in your product when they were a SPAC, because these companies are not like legacy companies. These companies are at the emerging trends of entire new industries like electric vehicles, robotics, etc., that are using data-driven platforms to operationalize their business like Foundry. That is the SPAC thesis that a lot of people are not understanding, and that's ultimately why I think it's the most strategic thing in the world, instead of investing in a sales force with $200 million, to actually invest into companies that have the potential to blow up using your platform because these companies are real, they're legit, and they're doing amazing things. I don't think this analyst actually knows some of these companies that Palantir invested in. And the reason they don't know that is because BlackSky, look at their tweets that they recently put out over the weekend. Breaking news, BlackSky constellation captures images of fire in Luhansk, Ukraine. I'm sorry, I'm saying that wrong. Less than 1 hour before sundown at 1600 hours local time. Our dawn-to-dusk capabilities offer a unique first-to-know view into events as they unfold on the ground. This company, this SPAC that this CNBC guy wants you to sell off, is actually using geospatial intelligence data through satellite imagery, through IoT devices that are on their satellites in outer space to be able to locate imagery data around what's going on in Ukraine and Russia right now. Now, the Ukraine-Russia situation is a horrible, horrible situation for what's happening right now. It's one of the most saddest things in the world to see another country get literally invaded by another country. The world is not sunshine and rainbows. Bad things happen in the world. Chaos happens in the world. And technologies that can use data and build companies around that business model to actionably use that data in a meaningful way to change the world are the companies that Palantir is investing in, are these SPACs that are somehow the worst thing in the world, according to analysts. BlackSky image captured 1,435 hours local time. More than 100 military vehicles alongside Chernobyl. We know that Russia was trying to take over Chernobyl, 130 kilometers north of Kyiv, Ukraine, which is the capital of Ukraine. Open source videos show Russian tanks and BMPs nearby with reports of increased radiation levels due to vehicles disturbing these grounds. The fact that this company is actually able to use geospatial intelligence data to see that military vehicles are moving along the road, which means they could then inform the Ukrainian government or other Ukrainian companies to not go around that road or to try to deter that road or do things around that road to literally protect civilians and their lives is the reason why Palantir did not just invest in random companies, but rather companies that were going to be at the forefront of data-driven problems, because all of this, collecting this data, making sense of this data, using AI and machine learning to even know that this is a military vehicle, to show the actionable insights that, hey, we know these are military vehicles because we can interpret from our imagery that these are military vehicles, are the reason for why these SPACs are going to be emerging leaders in this type of industry, especially with mission critical work that is so important. I mean, when I saw this stuff over the weekend, I was just amazed because I was like, wait a second, I'm invested in a company that has exposure to a SPAC that's being decimated by the market. I think it's at like a $2 stock price right now because none of the SPACs are being respected in the market right now. And this investor is telling me, or this analyst is telling me to sell it off. But I'm looking at the company and I saw this on my Twitter feed on Saturday. I was like, wait a second. This company is actually trying to play a role in helping what's going on with Ukraine and Russia with the best things that they could do with their technology, the role they could play, which could be a potentially very big role by showing satellite imagery data and then giving that to organizations that need it. Now, I don't know if BlackSky is working with Ukraine or the Ukrainian government or Ukrainian companies, but the fact that they have the technology that is able to provide mission critical data at a moment where it's literally life or death, potentially without this type of data, is the reason that Palantir invested in this company and is the larger story that is so important to understand if you are investing in Palantir and to deter against all the nonsense around why these SPACs are a bad investment. Update, image collected over Kharkiv, Ukraine. BlackSky rapid revisit capability and analytics show additional shelling. New craters skirt the edge of residential areas causing damage to nearby service and retail shops. If these areas, you can tell, oh, wait a second, they don't have service anymore. Networks are not going to be able to reach them. We have to find a new way to communicate with them if bad things are happening, is only available if you know those places don't have service. How do you know they don't have service? Because you have the data from potentially satellite imagery to make sense of the fact that they don't have service. BlackSky image collected over northeast suburbs of Kharkiv, Ukraine. Today show effects of shelling in fields alongside Soborna Street, a main route sandwiched amid neighborhood and just hundreds of meters north of a hospital, elementary school, and marketplace. These are real images, real data being shown by real technology that is very complicated to be able to do, and that's fundamentally trying to solve something that is a data problem. This is the stuff that's super, super important to understand. I don't know if BlackSky is literally working with the Ukrainian government or Ukrainian companies to help them make sense of the imagery that they're providing. But the point is that analyst didn't understand that these are the type of companies that Palantir is investing in. Palantir is investing in companies that can be at the core frontier of emerging industries that are solving issues in a world in which data is the solution to a lot of these problems. Imagery, IoT, satellite geospatial intelligence, all AI, ML, all of this stuff comes together and it's a data problem, which is why BlackSky is using Foundry's platform as the basis to be able to operationalize everything that they're doing. So it's like when Palantir is investing in those companies and you look at BlackSky's SPAC price, I think it went from like $11 to $2, you're like, oh, well, this is a crap company. This is a pump and dump. without actually realizing and doing some deeper analysis saying, wait a second, they're collecting imagery that might be useful to the Ukrainian government to stop them from being invaded by an entire different regime and stop millions of people from potentially dying because of some of this technology that is able to provide data and enhanced insights so the country knows what's going on at what time. Like, that is the potential of the companies that Palantir is invested in. And I don't think the analysts that are going on CNBC and getting hundreds of thousands of views because you're on CNBC that are spewing this stuff actually are looking at this stuff. Just like with Tesla, I don't think you were looking at what was going on with the growth potential. You were just looking at, oh, they're buying revenue. Same thing with Palantir. It's like, well, do you know what companies they're invested in? Do you know what these companies are doing? And more importantly, do you believe in the thesis that the world is only going to get more chaotic? That the world is not going to be sunshine and rainbows? Because as we can see in the first 2 months of 2022, the world is not sunshine and rainbows. And because the world is not sunshine and rainbows, bad things happen. Well, when bad things happen, what companies, what technologies are going to be around to make sure we can make sense of the bad things that are happening and hopefully provide actual solutions to these bad things so bad things don't become really bad things? And when Palantir is investing in companies like that, that only makes me more secure as a shareholder, knowing, look, these are growth companies that are being decimated by the macro level economics that are going on, but these are not crap hole companies. And because they're not crap hole companies, there's real potential there. And taking a loss right now on your earnings per share is not a reason to be like, oh, I'm selling off the stock because they invested in these SPACs, even if it's like 1% of their entire revenue, and that's why it's bad. It's like, no, there's a bigger story here, and analysts usually don't understand that story because they're analysts. Last thing we're going to do is watch a 1-minute video. This video is really important because it gives a lot of insight into what BlackSky actually does. If you actually looked at that video, look at the stuff they're talking about. Preventing things from happening before they happen, having predictable insights, being able to know how to allocate resources effectively because these places are going to get decimated by natural disasters, being able to see how earthquakes are coming and which parts of the world are going to get affected by those earthquakes because we have geospatial intelligence data. There is a new world in which we can stop bad things from happening, or we can at least hinder how bad the effects of those things are. But that world only exists if there's technology that is able to provide the insights from a data perspective, because this is all a data problem, to solve these things. And this video in and of itself, this is supposed to be the selling video of the company, and all they're talking about are mission critical things. They're not talking about, oh, you can find this data and sell it to this company and they can make more money off this data from satellite imagery. It's like the stuff that imagery that they're trying to sell is to institutions and to companies that are actually going to be able to provide life-saving relief or preventable things from happening in terms of allocation of resources and relief to people when things go bad or before things get really bad. And those are the type of companies that Palantir is investing in. And if you're thinking that the SPAC thesis is bad, it is really important to understand why they're investing in these companies, why these companies are down due to the macroeconomic environment, and what is the growth story with the companies that they're investing in, that the companies, the SPACs, are trying to be a part of when it comes to emerging industries that are going to use data. It's not going to be the legacy companies. It's going to be companies like BlackSky, because things aren't sunshine and rainbows. And when things go bad, and you could have geospatial intelligence data actually be able to provide insights into why things are going bad and how to stop things from going bad. And Palantir has an equity stake in you. And by the way, that company is using Palantir software to do in the entire operations of this stuff. That becomes a really important company that is meaningful to invest in and to understand, not just look at the share price in 2021 or 2022. Those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you think about BlackSky. I think it's an amazing company. Did a video on that back in November. You can definitely check it out. Thank you guys for watching so much. Looking forward to your comments. I'll see you in the next one.